Today, the only way most people can amass Bitcoin is through buying. However, unless you're a high net worth individual, getting the funds to grow your stash of Bitcoin can be challenging. As we all know, every dollar of income that you earn has many expenses competing for it. But what if I told you that by cutting your living expenses and creating a surplus of just $10 a week, you could amass tens of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin in a decade or less? Stay tuned until the end of the video where we share detailed data that shows you how this is possible. Now, what small expense are you willing to cut back on to save $10 a week for buying Bitcoin? Share your thoughts in the comments. Before we jump in, if you're new around here or just beginning your Bitcoin journey, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to never miss out on the latest videos from Bitcoin Basics. Also, subscribe to the Bitcoin Basics email newsletter using the link in the description to receive a free copy of my Fun Money to Millionaire Bitcoin Net Worth Tracker. And finally, this video and any other video we publish on this channel are for entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Before investing in any asset, including Bitcoin, you should do independent due diligence and consult certified experts. With that out of the way, let's get started. There was a time when you could accumulate 50 Bitcoin in minutes with little investment besides a simple CPU computer. Most of us wish that the clock could be turned back so that we could seize the opportunity to become billionaires in 2024. Unfortunately, that can only remain as wishful thinking. Today, the mining reward per block has come down to 3.125 Bitcoin. Also, you can only mine with sophisticated and costly ASIC miners. And even with that, the chances are still low for an individual miner with limited resources. That leaves us with buying as the only viable path to follow. The good news is you can buy a small piece of Bitcoin at a time, as little as $10 worth. The part you need to hack is how to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible in the shortest time possible. The money with which you'll buy your Bitcoin, again assuming you're not a high net worth individual, has to come from your salary, wages, or profits from whatever business you're engaged in. Now, if you're like most people, your income has to compete with many expenses. Most likely, after you've paid for your living expenses, you're often left with nothing that you can use to purchase even a few satoshis. Depending on which study you believe, between 60% and 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That basically means whatever people in this category earn is hardly sufficient to pay for their living expenses. According to the 2024 Annual Emergency Savings Report by Bankrate, a consumer financial services company, only 44% of Americans can pay an emergency expense of $1,000 or more from their savings. Even if you find yourself in this category, you can still accumulate a Bitcoin stash. But that can only happen after you've taken a few critical steps. Before going through those steps, it's important to point out that living paycheck to paycheck is not necessarily because one has a low income. One could earn $100,000 a year and live paycheck to paycheck, while another person earning $60K manages to save, have an emergency fund, and invest. To a large extent, living paycheck to paycheck is about managing your finances. Now, to put yourself in a position to not only have a surplus from your income you can use to acquire some satoshis every week or month, but to also increase the frequency and the amount such that in the shortest time possible, you have a sizable amount of Bitcoin, you need to manage your finances. What does that entail exactly? The first step is to understand your income. You need to have detailed records of every cent that comes into your bank account or wallet. That might sound like a no-brainer, but often we operate on mental accounting and make assumptions that could mean the difference between $100 and $1,000. It's important that you are very much aware of the amount at your disposal every month to the cent and not to the nearest tens or hundreds. If you're unaware of how much exactly you earn, you might easily overestimate your spending ability, leading to serious mistakes. Once you clearly understand your income, it's time to understand your expenses. This is basically determining your financial baseline. If you can, create a detailed spreadsheet for that purpose. This generally requires a more careful approach, not only to avoid missing cost items, but more importantly, to distinguish unavoidable ones from avoidable ones, or those that can be scaled down with little impact on the quality of life that you're living. Begin your analysis by listing your core essentials. A cost item is a core essential if not spending on it causes direct discomfort and has a serious impact on the quality of your life. The most notable core essentials include housing, whose cost comes in the form of rent or mortgage. It's a general rule of thumb that this item in your list of expenditures should not exceed 30% of your total income. Groceries and food, which should not exceed 10% of your total income. Utilities, including electricity, house heating, and money for car, gas, or transportation, and insurance. Ideally, this group of expenditures should not exceed 10% of your income. Clothes, which is an essential expenditure, but is not necessarily a recurring one. You can skip many months of not spending money on clothes and similar items. In general, your monthly essential expenditure should be below 50% of your total income. Now, when listing your expenditures, you can ensure you stay within this limit by identifying and dealing with items that masquerade as core essentials, but they're not. For example, housing is essential, but living in a penthouse with an indoor pool in the central business district of a major tourist city is not essential. You can always find a less costly but comfortable place to live. Food is essential, but eating in a high-end restaurant every other day is not. Clothes are essential, but buying designer clothes every month is not. You get the point. With these parameters established, your total income and the cost of your essentials, it's time to share and distribute your income. Pay yourself first. The concept of paying yourself first is one of the core tenets of personal financial management, espoused by George Clason in his best-selling book, The Richest Man in Babylon. He recommends that one should save at least 10% of their income. He writes, quote, "For every 10 coins you place in your purse, take out for use but 9. Your purse will start to fatten at once, and its increasing weight will feel good in your hands and bring satisfaction to your soul." The 10% you save can generally go to two primary types of funds: the emergency fund and the investment fund. Indeed, the two funds can be the source of the money you use to accumulate Bitcoin. The emergency fund is money in savings that can only be used during moments of crisis, such as when you lose a job, your business is lost, or you're not healthy enough to continue working. You should aim for the amount to cover your core essentials for at least 6 months. Since we're talking about Bitcoin, keeping your emergency fund in Bitcoin would be okay. Bitcoin can, over time, protect your value from inflation, and considering it could be years before you ever need your emergency funds, the value of Bitcoin would generally be likely to have gone up. The savings fund is the money that one uses to buy assets such as real estate, stocks, and, of course, Bitcoin. George Clason's other piece of wisdom in The Richest Man in Babylon is that one needs to invest one's savings in a manner that makes them multiply. He writes, quote, "Put each coin to laboring that it may reproduce its kind even as flocks of the field and help bring to you income, a stream of wealth that shall flow constantly into your purse." Of course, there are many places you can put your savings to have them multiply. That list includes stocks, money markets, commodities, options, derivatives, and more. Bitcoin is an option that's been around for slightly over a decade. In that time, it's proven to be a viable place to keep your savings. It's deflationary because its supply is capped at 21 million. That means its value will continue to grow as the demand goes up. According to a report published by Van Eck, Bitcoin has been the best performing asset class in 8 of the past 11 years. The only years that the cryptocurrency did not top the other asset classes was 2014 when it lost 60.5%, in 2018 when it lost 72.31%, and in 2022 when it lost 65%. In some of the years, Bitcoin topped the list of performance it had gained in ranges that no other asset has reached ever. For example, it gained 5,866% in 2013, while the second best performing asset was U.S. equities at 32.39%. When the entire period is averaged, Bitcoin tops the list, gaining 732.19%. U.S. equities are second at 14.88%. What does that mean exactly? This means that if you had bought Bitcoin worth $10 in a certain week in 2013, that amount would have been worth about $73 today. Now, let's assume you bought $10 every week throughout 2013. You'll have a stash of Bitcoin worth about $3,700 from that year alone. If we achieve cumulative over the years, then you would have stood to have a significantly high amount of Bitcoin. The point here is that if you manage to set aside even as little as $10 every week from your paycheck to buy a few Satoshis, you're likely to accumulate Bitcoin worth as much as $30,000 in a decade. If you increase that amount to $100, then we will look at amounts that could be enough for you to retire on. So, what can you easily give up on your list of expenses and raise $10 weekly to buy a few Satoshis? Is it 3 cappuccinos at Starbucks or a dinner a week? What's it going to be? I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed watching to help support the channel. I'll see you in the next Bitcoin Basics video.